Thinking about going on an extended hike, backpacking trip, or other off-grid activity? Then you need Silent Pocket's waterproof and signal-proof dry bag that will protect your electronic devices not only from the elements, but any wireless threat to your privacy as well. These bags are super lightweight, packable, and durable 420D nylon ripstop that will roll down to a compact size as well. Pick up one for yourself at silentpocket.com and make sure you use discount code SHAREDSECURITY to take 15% off your order at checkout.
Hey everyone, it's Scott Wright here for ClickArmor. October is here, and that means it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month again. Whether you're a manager responsible for security, an employee in an organization, or you're just interested in security, I'd like to tell you about ClickArmor's new video blog that I post on YouTube. It's called Creating Active Awareness. This blog is primarily aimed at innovative security managers who want to do really effective security awareness. But this month, I have tips for everyone, regardless of your role, that give you some ideas on how to make good use of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So check out the ClickArmor channel on YouTube to see the many short episodes of this ongoing series. And finally, and most exciting, you should definitely check out our free Home Alone gamified learning module that teaches you and your team in a fun way how to work from home securely with your own organization's leaderboard. To get started, just go to clickarmor.ca/sharedsecurity.
Welcome to episode 105 of the Shared Security Monthly Show. And in this episode, we're finishing up our three-part series on targeted attacks, which today is about the exploit. So we'll be talking about common exploit mechanics like exploit kits, payloads, ransomware, what happens when you open up a malicious file, and how do cybersecurity professionals investigate these attacks? And if that wasn't enough, we'll talk about what to do if you discover that you've been a victim of a malware attack and what steps you should take if you do happen to become a victim of a targeted attack. So if you haven't checked out part one, which was on reconnaissance, and part two about pretext and attack development, we'll make sure that we have those links in our show notes for you to check out.
I think you forgot one thing, Tom.
Oh, I did?
The last part is how to become paranoid.
Yes. We'll talk about, perhaps we'll talk about how not to become paranoid.
Oh, okay.
How's that? So
after everything you went through there, it sounded like we should be paranoid. So
yeah. No, I don't think so, but
okay.
We'll get into that. So without further ado, joining me is, of course, co-host Scott Wright. Hello, Scott.
Hey, guys.
Hello. And also joining us is special guest Tyler Hudak, who's the incident response practice lead at TrustedSec. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, awesome to have you again. And as I say again, Tyler's actually been on episode 110 of our weekly show, which was titled "You've Been Hacked, Now What?" So it's great having you back on the show to talk a little bit about malware and incident response with us again.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So before we get into today's discussion, Tyler, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at TrustedSec?
Sure. So I've been in security for over 20 years now. A lot of it has been doing incident response. And so right now I'm at TrustedSec. Most people probably know who Dave Kennedy is. That's typically what we hear.
Who? Dave?
Yeah, exactly. He ran a conference. He does.
Isn't he from Canada?
I think so. Yeah. But this is one of Dave's companies. We do consulting. We're best known for our red teams, purple teams, things like that. But my team is the incident response team, where we get called in to kind of be those emergency services when somebody gets hacked. We also do threat hunting, some softer things like tabletop exercises. But the nice thing is, at least for us, we enjoy it. We get to kind of see all of these different attacks that are happening. And so with ransomware or business email compromises or kind of your commodity malware or just any type of attack, we're brought in and we kind of get to see the inside of the story and figure out what happened.
Yeah, that's cool. So you pretty much say that, your daily job is, around targeted attacks because you have customers that are, under attack. They're having data breaches because of a targeted attack. Is there any kind of recent incidents that's, obviously keeping confidentiality a priority? Anything that has recently happened that, was kind of interesting from your perspective that you've worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all depends on what your definition of a targeted attack is, but I would kind of lump business email compromises into that. We're seeing a lot of business email compromises recently. And I guess for those who don't know, these are the kind of attacks that end up being where the wire transfer fraud, essentially, where somebody's email gets hacked. The attackers get into that email. They look to see who's paying the bills or who's sending out the invoices, and then they kind of spoof that person and implant themselves into their inbox so that they can send all of their partners or clients fake invoices saying, hey, you owe us $1 million, and by the way, our account number changed, please send it to this account. And then just wait for the money to start coming in. Those typically start with a phishing attack, and the attackers do perform reconnaissance on these companies, their victims, or at least their initial victims. We've seen where a attacker might perform reconnaissance for up to a month prior to starting that phishing attack, and we know this by a lot of times the attackers will register kind of like a typo squatted domain, very similar to the victims, so that once they get into their email, they can start sending emails out from that typo squatted domain, so it looks like it's coming from the actual people. And we've seen those domains registered in upwards of 1 to 2 months prior to the actual attack happening. So those are definitely targeted because the attackers are doing recon. They're figuring out who pays your bills, how much money you make, who your clients are, things like that.
Wow, that's crazy. Have you had incidents where you've seen C-level executives being targeted specifically?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They are a prime example of who's going to get targeted in a case like this, because a lot of people, if the person down the hall from you sends an email saying, hey, I need you to go and buy 50 iTunes gift cards, you're probably going to tell them no. But if the CEO tells you that, then that's usually a different story. We've even seen it where the attackers have timed it so that the CEO is on vacation. They know the CEO on vacation because they can see his inbox, they can see his calendar. They wait till he goes on vacation and then send an email to his administrative assistant or somebody in accounting saying, hey, we have this upcoming presentation or whatever, we want to give away gift cards. Can you go and buy 50 iTunes gift cards and send me the serial numbers for them? And people will do it because it's coming from their CEO. They have that sense of urgency in the emails. So yeah, absolutely. The C-level gets targeted all the time.
So what are some indicators just outside of like say a virus scan or an alert on your computer that you might have malware installed?
I think part of it, what it comes down to, and as security professionals, we don't rely on the human part of analysis or discovery as much as we should. We're very reliant upon technical indicators, which we should be. But somebody who uses their computer, they're going to know when it's acting funny. They're going to know when it's acting slow, and so a lot of times sometimes we get brought into cases where somebody just knows something's wrong with their computer and their IT can't figure it out. So they bring us in and say, hey, can you just look at this just to make sure that there's nothing on there? And lo and behold, we find something. Outside of that, a lot of the indicators that we see for once an attacker gets embedded into your network are those weird authentications. Hopefully I know everybody's not doing this, but hopefully a lot of organizations are at least centrally logging authentications across their environment, both failed and successful. And oftentimes when we get into some type of analysis, so for example, I'll just use an example. We recently worked a ransomware case where the attackers got in through a phishing email, malicious documents. They got embedded onto the central system and then started to move laterally within the environment, eventually getting to the point where they were able to get a domain admin and then kind of spread out from there. When you look at the places that the domain admin was logging into, they were logging into places they had never logged into before, as well as at times when they weren't working. So finding those anomalies, I think, can often be very helpful in detecting lateral movement, which leads you directly back to malware and a human-operated attacker inside your network.
So maybe walk us through kind of, from a professional's perspective, you're called up to do a case of an incident, a company's been compromised through a somewhat type of targeted attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the first couple things that you do to start off your investigation?
Well, first we want to gain visibility into whatever we can. Normally we'll go in there and we'll look to, and remember, I'm coming in at it from a consulting perspective. If somebody is within an organization, they're going to already have access to all this information, but we want to get access to the systems that are involved somehow. Either the slowest way is to just power that thing off and ship us the disk, or if it's a VM, upload the VMDK to us. That's not the best way to do it, but sometimes that's the only way. If that's not the case, then we have like live response software that we can run on systems, which gives us about 75% of what we need to do a forensic analysis. And so really in the beginning, it all depends on what visibility the client has and what we can get. And we start trying to trace back, what's on that system and where did it come from. We really want to see root cause. And we really want to see where it came from, because if you don't, then the attacker is still going to have backdoors and implants on the network, and it doesn't matter what we do. Eventually they'll come back if there's still that backdoor on that network. And so that's really what we're looking for. And sometimes we get lucky and the client has really good visibility. They have a SIM, they've got centralized logs. We can get in there and we can start kind of tracing that map very quickly of, all right, well, this user logged in here, this is where the malware came from. Let's start tracing it back till we get to patient 0. And you start generating basically a web, a spider web of what the attacker did. Unfortunately, in some cases, especially in ransomware cases, either the client does not have that visibility or the ransomware destroyed it. Ransomware is an excellent anti-forensics tool. And so sometimes you kind of have to go back to basics, and you're just kind of looking through log files and looking for anything you can in order to kind of get that hint of, all right, where did it come from, and slowly piece it back from there.
Cool. I got a question for you, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say there's a significant or growing percentage of companies that are engaging companies like TrustedSec proactively, like before they actually have an incident? And if they're doing that, is that worthwhile? Do you have a good sort of process for getting people to do proactive stuff?
Yeah, that kind of falls into the incident response retainer. And yeah, we see a lot of people kind of proactively going out and setting up those contracts, setting up those buckets of hours, or however the contract works prior to an incident. The advantage to doing that is if you already have somebody who you have on retainer for an incident, then they're contractually obligated to you to respond. If you don't have a retainer, you can call an incident response company, but it's gonna, if they can work on it, will be based on their workload. Unfortunately, we've been in those cases where we are just slammed with work, and somebody calls us and says they need help, but we have to turn it away because we just don't have the manpower to dedicate to it. In addition to that, one of the first things that any organization should do once they get hacked is contact their cyber insurance, if they have cyber insurance. And one of the big things with cyber insurance is you need to know who you are allowed to use for incident response. Each policy is different. So some policies allow you to use anywhere, or anyone, and then the insurance will reimburse you up to a certain amount. And some insurance policies require you to use a very small subset of providers that they have kind of like pre-approved. So you don't want to get into a situation where you go out and hire somebody for incident response, and then you turn around and talk to your insurance company, and they said, well, we're not going to pay for that because you've probably already paid for the incident response. So that's kind of one of the things that we get
messy,
into. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, so can you maybe show us a couple of the techniques and tools that you use on your job to investigate malware and ransomware?
So one of the things that we often do when we're in the middle of an incident is, and we get malware, we need to get those indicators as to what the malware does. And that's where malware analysis tends to come in. There are a lot of different tools that you can use for this, but sometimes what it comes down to is just running the malware and seeing what it does. And one of those big places, and one of the ways that you can get kind of quick wins in the middle of a response, is finding those network indicators. So what command and control IP addresses or websites does the malware beacon out to? Because then you can take those IPs or those domains, look through your proxy logs, look through your firewalls, NetFlow, whatever you might have on the network. Everybody at least has a firewall that I've been around. I can't remember the last time I went at someplace and they didn't have a firewall. So what I'll do is I'll kind of show one of the ways that I find that are really easy to get those network indicators out really fast. So what I have here is I just have a Windows 7 VM. You can use, obviously you can use any version of Windows. I have Process Explorer here off to the side just so I can, we can see what's going on. I've got a couple other tools. I've got Fiddler. Fiddler is a web debugger. I know a lot of pen testers and web app testers use it. It's an amazing tool, but we're going to use it for malware analysis here. We'll need to set that up. I'll set that up in a second. And then I also have another tool called Curports. This is basically like Netstat or TCP View, except the difference is Curports actually allows you to log all of the changes. So where like TCP View will just kind of show you the changes, Curports actually allows you to log them. And in addition to that, I don't know if I have it set up here. I don't, but it will also do GeoIP location for you. So I just enabled that, so I'm just going to minimize that. And the big thing with that one is it's going to show you what process is reaching out to which systems, which is important. And then we've got the web debugger here, Fiddler. A couple things that you need to do before you can start capturing everything. So I've got an administrative command prompt here. These are just my notes. First, we need to set up the system to have the proxy to be Fiddler. You can do this from the GUI. I usually do it from the command line, just so I can run a quick script and have it go. So I'm just using the netsh command to set the proxy. What I found as well, I don't know if you always have to do this, but I typically also run it with the syswow64 version of netsh. And the reason I do that is in Windows, if you go to Windows System 32, those are all the 64-bit versions of DLLs and executables. The syswow64 directory has the 32-bit version of those, because a 32-bit executable, because Windows is backwards compatible, a 32-bit executable can't load a 64-bit DLL. I mean, it can, but you have to jump through hoops and all that. And so Windows kind of keeps 32-bit versions of all these programs in the syswow64 directory. I found that some malware will start off with a 32-bit process and then migrate to a 64-bit. And if you don't run netsh from syswow64, sometimes Fiddler then can't capture that traffic. So it's one thing that I always do. So that's set up. And then we have to go into Fiddler itself, to tools and the Fiddler options. And by default, it will capture all, right now it'll capture all kind of like web traffic. But I wanted to capture and decrypt SSL traffic as well. So I'm going to click decrypt HTTPS traffic. I'm going to tell it, yeah, trust the Fiddler certificate. I'm obviously on a sandbox here. Don't do this on your regular system. Have a VM or something set up to do this for you. Then I'm going to tell it to ignore certificate errors because surprise, surprise, malware has a lot of bad SSL certificates. And then click OK. And now it's capturing as we see down here. If I wanted to verify that, I'll just open up Chrome.
So what we're seeing here, just for our audience, this would be, you would install these tools on a compromised system so you can identify the traffic either through an HTTP browser like Chrome or Firefox, but also any other ports that it might be communicating to. Right?
Yeah, yeah, you absolutely could do this on a compromised system. I probably wouldn't install Fiddler onto it unless I had taken a snapshot of it. Yeah. So if it was like a VM, like an ESX VM, I would have taken a snapshot and then kind of done this. not from the corporate network. I would have done it from another network. In this case, oftentimes you will get a copy of that malware, and you want to examine that in your lab, on your own system, probably from an internet connection that's not associated with your organization either. So jump on wireless somewhere, or like a 5G device, or something like that, so it's not directly associated with you.
Makes sense.
But so here we've got our web debugger going. You can see that Chrome. Let me kind of move this over just so we can see everything. You can see that the process here, Chrome, went out, and so we're capturing all the data. I just deleted that, and then I've got a copy of TrickBot. TrickBot is a pretty popular malware right now. You often see it involved in ransomware compromises. I know Microsoft has recently gone through and is starting to take down a number of their core servers. So who knows how much longer TrickBot will still be around, but in this case, it's actually a really good example to show kind of how this works. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to run TrickBot. And we can see over here on the right-hand side, and TrickBot is running. It will probably kill itself in a second, and then inject itself into another process. So this will take probably a minute or two to get going, but eventually what will happen is we'll see TrickBot start to reach out to the internet. And because we have Fiddler going and we have Kerports going, we're going to record all that traffic. And even more importantly, we're actually going to be able to see inside the SSL packets to see what it's transferring back and forth. A lot of times that data inside is encoded or encrypted or compressed or something like that. But at least we'll have captured that. Sometimes you get lucky and the malware is just doing plain text inside. So this will probably take a couple minutes to go, but we can kind of keep watching it as it runs. TrickBot is one of those where it just kind of likes to sit there and wait, and then eventually it will kind of start pushing things out. You can see.
Yep.
Where it started off, War Manager, which is the Windows error manager, it is basically injecting itself into that. And within a minute or two, we should see, hopefully, knock on wood, Fiddler will actually capture some outbound requests. There we go. Cool. So we can see here, I'll just maximize this. A bunch of requests we know is coming from War Manager. And you can see that it's trying to go out to all these different websites, these IP addresses on port 449. TrickBot, for whatever reason, loves port 449 and 447. So anybody listening to this, go on your network and look for any outbound traffic to 449 or 447. If you see that, you probably have TrickBot on your system or in your network. But we can go in here. This is kind of the cool thing. This is what I love about this. We can go in here and we can actually start looking at these requests. So a couple things we can see here. Let me kind of change the view a little bit just so it's a little bit easier to see. So here up on top, we've got the request that was sent out to port 449. Interestingly, it's using a curl user agent. This was actually the first time that I've seen TrickBot using curl as a user agent. What we have here in the URL too, let me see if I can.
And curl is just a command line.
Yeah. It's not really using curl. It's just using its user agent for whatever reason. It's a GET request, and we know that this was done through SSL because we saw the tunnel happen right before it. This is kind of some inside TrickBot information, but if you get this, you can tell a lot by what you see here. The first directory in there, the MOR 134, that is actually the campaign for TrickBot. What you'll actually see is that number will increase as new configuration files come out. So if we left this running for a couple of days, we might see that get incremented to more 135 and then 136, and we might see different 3 letters because it might migrate to different campaigns or do different things. After that, the John-PC, that is the name of my host, my sandbox here, and then the W617601.99 and so on. That's related to like the version, the operating system that I'm running, and so on. And then below here we see that it responded. Unfortunately, it's all kind of compressed or encrypted somehow, so we can't really see much else. but we could at least, see that. And more importantly, we now know that this IP address of 103.109.78.174 is something that the malware connected out to. So now we can go and we can search for that on our network.
So that's like a command and control server, essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You can see it also reached out to icanhasip.com. TrickBot loves to go out and pull this to see what your IP address is. And then we've got some more requests here and the responses. Let me see if I can pull the raw responses here. There's some plain text data, but a lot of it is still kind of that encrypted. This is just a /1.
What does it do with that IP address information that it requests?
It's used to basically as kind of a anti-analysis feature. So a lot of the common sandboxes or sandnets that are online that you can submit malware to, the ones that VirusTotal uses, trying to think what else, any.run, things like that, or even antivirus companies or security companies, the attackers have aggregated all of these IP addresses. So they will go and they will look to see, what is that IP address? And if it's one on my blacklist, then they'll just stop running.
Right. Just an indication that it's in the wild somewhere.
Exactly.
So if you didn't know what a particular piece of malware was, how would you go about just identifying that, say this was TrickBot that's installed?
There are a couple ways that you can do that. The best way is to, search on VirusTotal. VirusTotal, is this amazing resource that just everybody uploads malware to. Now, the thing that I'll say is I wouldn't necessarily recommend uploading the malware to it, especially if we're talking a targeted attack, because when you upload malware to VirusTotal, anybody who has access to VirusTotal can then download that. And if you got hit with a targeted attack, obviously TrickBot is not necessarily a targeted attack, but let's say an APT group or some type of group like that attacked you and compromised you, and you have their malware. There's a chance that information about your organization could be in that malware. I've seen where attackers will hard code your proxy servers or your DNS servers or your domain controllers into malware to make it unique to you. And so if you upload that to VirusTotal, people are going to figure out that you got attacked. I saw a great example of this the other day. We were doing some research into a ransomware attack, where the malware came from an email, and we were trying to find that email or that document, and we hadn't found it internal yet, but we were able to kind of correlate some SMTP information that we had with the server that it was sent from, and so we were kind of searching around for that server, and it ended up leading to a message file, an Outlook message file on VirusTotal that ended up having this document in it. And so we downloaded that message file, and somebody in their organization who had gotten hit with this had uploaded that email. So it had their domain name in there. It had all of the headers from their organization. And so we knew that this organization had gotten hit with, this malware. Imagine if you were a large organization and you didn't want it leaked that you got attacked.
Yeah.
That just happened. But so I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there. Cool. What you can do is, start looking at the malware in VirusTotal. Like I said, I don't necessarily recommend just kind of uploading that malware itself to VirusTotal, but what you can do is you can take the cryptographic hash of that malware, the MD5 or the SHA-1 or the SHA-256, and upload it to VirusTotal and see if it's up there, and that will often tell you what it is. To kind of show you how that's done, I'm just going to open up Chrome on here. Let me go to VirusTotal. I'm actually going to, this TrickBot has been out for a while, so I'm just going to upload that. I'm going to go against what I just said not to do.
It's only TrickBot.
Yeah.
Okay, it might not be the real thing that you upload.
So here you can see that, it automatically gets the hash for us, and we've got 27 out of 69 are showing us that it's bad. If we go to community, it actually tells you, where you can go get more information.
Mm-hmm.
It's always possible that TrickBot doesn't, or sorry, that VirusTotal doesn't have the information. And so what I'd recommend doing is just copying that hash
Mm-hmm.
and then just searching for that on Google, and see what you get. In this case, we get two hits, one on bizarre.abuse.ch, which is a huge malware repository that anybody can go and download malware from. And then on Hybrid Analysis, which is a really good sandbox, one of the sandboxes out there. So if you didn't have the ability to analyze the malware, now you can go and you can see what somebody else did. So
that's cool. So let's kind of jump into defense, right? So, what are, we talk about ransomware all the time, and that's probably the biggest, TrickBot obviously can pull down ransomware components too. I think all of this malware, right, can evolve into something more serious, right? Eventually. So what are kind of your recommended best defenses from both those, like a personal computer perspective? So mom and dad, right, and their computers, all the way to kind of, the corporate world.
Wow. This is going to be kind of a stock answer, I think. A lot of it comes down to education still. People still have that mentality that I'm not going to get hacked, or why would somebody hack me or my organization? We don't have anything. I think that the kind of the default way of doing end user education, of telling people not only don't click on links, don't open up documents on emails, things like that, you need to do. But I think it's actually also helpful to kind of sit down with people and tell them what are the attacks out there. Explain what a business email compromise is. Show an example. Show that the FBI said last year that it accounted for something like over $1 billion in losses, and that people sit up when they hear that. On the technical side, EDR, is kind of one of those things that has. I will be the first to admit, when EDR, first started to become really popular, I was like, all right, well, this is just another antivirus. Antivirus, it has its weaknesses. It won't detect everything, but where EDR, enterprise desktop or detection and response software has evolved to, gives you so much visibility across your network. It's really unbelievable the power you have at your hands now. Looking at tools like Fidelis or Carbon Black or CrowdStrike, whatever else is out there, if you deploy that properly in your environment, you have the ability to see every process that's executing on every one of your endpoints, every network connection. Wow. You can see things that all of your logs are going to show you if you're centralizing it. And let me say too, EDR is not a replacement for centralizing logs. You still need to do that. You need to have that defense in depth, and you need to have that redundancy so that, if, let's say, the attacker got on and deleted your SIM, how else are you going to get that information? There are other ways to fall back on that. But deploying EDR is going to give you so much visibility. And not only that, it also has the capability to allow you to respond. Most EDR software, allow you to contain a system so that it's still running and you can communicate with it through the EDR platform, but it can't communicate with anything else. So if a system is compromised and you need to do something like pull a memory acquisition from that system, the EDR software is probably going to let you do that while still keeping the rest of your network safe. So that is one of the biggest things that I think people still need to kind of get around to deploying.
That's really cool, actually, because when I heard the term EDR probably only less than a year ago for the first time, and to me it just sounded like endpoint security stuff, right? Antivirus and whitelisting or whatever. So it's really good to know what that capability does and what it means. And it could be useful. I tend to focus on what does the end user need to know, to be secure. And sometimes they don't need to know all those details, but sometimes it's really helpful for them to know what is possible or what the limits are of the security software that you've got in place.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. One of the most effective things that I found way back when I first started in security and we started doing end user education was, we would not only teach the people in the organization the best practices for security for the organization, we'd also teach them that for at home as well, because if they're learning how to secure their stuff at home, it's just going to transfer over to what's going on in the organization. And now with everybody working remotely, that kind of transfers over to security of the organization as well. I can't tell you how many cases that we've worked in the last 9 months where the root cause was because the organization was all working remotely and the user got hacked in their home network, or the remote access was set up insecurely. It's this huge life cycle that all kind of feeds into each other.
Yeah, awesome. Great.
Anything in particular with ransomware that people should know?
Wow. I will say I'm a big believer in not paying the ransom. I think that just kind of feeds it. Unfortunately, there are some cases where you have to. I've been on those calls where,
wow.
Their backups are gone. All their data is gone, and the only way that they can get it back is paying the ransom. And it's really heartbreaking to hear that, because they're feeding back into the whole criminal life cycle. Insurance is definitely not helping with that, because insurance will absolutely pay the ransom, and attackers know this. There have been recorded cases. We haven't seen this, but there have been recorded cases where the victims get a ransomware negotiation firm in place, and the ransomware negotiation firm says, well, so let's say the ransom was $3 million. The negotiator says, well, we'll pay you $1 million, and the ransomware operators come back and say, no, you will pay us $3 million because we have your insurance policy, and it says that they will pay up to $3 million. So they're smart with all of this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too that happens is now what I call double dipping, right? It's the extortion part of it, where they slurp the data first and then encrypt. So even if you don't pay the ransom, you're going to get extorted later. So is there any way to protect against that other than not getting the ransomware?
There is. It all comes back to basics. First off, you need to know what you have. You need to know where your kind of crown jewels are, and that kind of comes back to asset management. A lot of times we'll get into an organization and we'll say, all right, well, where is all your data at? And they will have no clue. So asset management is huge. And then, honestly, a lot of these attackers, when they're not using sophisticated methods to exfiltrate this data, normally what they do is they will just kind of gather it all onto an internal system and then FTP it out. So it's going out via FTP.
So there's the chance you could end up with the ransomware, and they expected to steal the data first, but they might not have been able to actually get the data? Is that
right? Exactly. Well, most people aren't blocking outbound FTP.
Right.
So they're probably going to get the data out. But yeah, there is that chance. I would say it's actually pretty rare for a ransomware group to not exfiltrate data. A year ago, nobody was doing it, maybe one or two. Now it's rare for somebody to not be doing it. And that kind of comes back to, when you get hit with ransomware, getting your systems back up and running, that's not the end of the story. That's really just the beginning of the investigation. Because you need to find out, was data exfiltrated? Are you going to get extorted? And do they still have access to your network? Because chances are, in my experience, the attackers, they don't encrypt everything in your environment. And the systems they don't encrypt probably have backdoors on them because they want to get back in, or more importantly, they'll sell access to those systems to somebody else, a month from now. And so you'll be dealing with this again in a month.
Yeah, great point. Not a great idea, but yeah.
Wow. Well, this has been great, Tyler. Thank you so much for coming on the show and showing us some of the tools of the trade that you
absolutely
use on a daily basis. Where can our listeners find out more about you and TrustedSec?
Sure. So, just go to TrustedSec.com if you want to see us. I'm on Twitter. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me, at SecShoggoth, SecShoggoth. And that anybody can kind of reach out if they have any questions or anything like that. I also do a lot of videos on Pluralsight too. So if anybody has a Pluralsight subscription, go out, check out my videos. Always looking for feedback on those as well.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Tyler. Scott, always nice to chat with you. And
excellent.
We will see you all next time.